known as Joe's War. Chamberlain was confident of victory. But the Boers were outmanoeuvring the British, ambushing the army and then disappearing into the hills. The conflict was turning into Imperial Britain's very own Vietnam. Joe called for drastic measures, and Commander-in-Chief Lord Kitchener was the man to take them.
In order to flush out the guerrillas, Kitchener created a vast barbed wire net spreading right across the country with 8,000 defensive blockhouses like this one at every corner. British forces swept through the countryside, killing cattle and sheep, burning crops. There were 30,000 undefended Boer farmhouses. Every single one of them was burned to the ground.
This destruction left thousands of Boer civilians, mostly women and children, homeless. But Lord Kitchener had a plan for them as well.
The British Army rounded up around 160,000 women and children, crammed them into wagons or railway trucks, and transported them to hastily improvised refugee camps, which, guarded by the army, quickly became outdoor prisons, and then, thanks to military incompetence, not by design, they became places of horror. Kitchener's policy gave the world a new phrase: concentration camps.
In December 1900, a young Cornish woman called Emily Hobhouse came to South Africa to deliver food and clothing to the camps. She found women and children living in tents under the relentless sun, starvation rations, terrible sanitation, swarms of flies everywhere. Stepping into one tent, Hobhouse came across an 8-year-old girl called Lizzie Van Zyl. On the verge of starvation, she was dying of typhoid.
Emily Hobhouse decided it was her duty to tell the people of Britain exactly what was being done out here in their name. And she spoke plainly. She talked of wholesale cruelty, murder to the children, and a war of extermination. And Emily Hobhouse was proved horribly right. 26,000 Boer women and children died in British concentration camps. 80% of them under the age of 16.
Boers finally surrendered in May 1902. It had taken 2.5 years, the equivalent of £20 billion and an army of 250,000 British soldiers, to defeat 60,000 Boer farmers.
And so David had given Goliath one heck of a kicking, and there was a massive national crisis of confidence. Then it was revealed that almost half of the men who'd volunteered for South Africa were unfit to fight. They were sick or too weak. Pamphlets began to appear asking, "Can England survive the century?" or "What should England do to be saved?" The British Empire still stood as tall, but perhaps now wobbling a bit on feet of clay.